It started with a sound no one else seemed to hear. The bell had just rung and the hallways of Lincoln High were slowly emptying, the soft chatter of students fading like echoes in a cathedral. Rain tapped steadily against the old brick walls, the kind that had seen generations of kids come and go, carrying their dreams and secrets through these very halls. And then it came. A low, almost imperceptible growl, barely louder than a whisper. It was the kind of sound that would make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, but no one noticed. No one. Except for Max. Max was no ordinary dog. He was a K9. Trained, disciplined, sharp as a tack. He'd been with Officer Daniels for 4 years, working everything from drug busts to missing persons cases. He wasn't just a dog. He was family to the team, a silent partner who never missed a thing. And today, as Daniels walked the quiet corridor of Lincoln High, Max suddenly stopped dead in his tracks in front of the art room. His ears perked up, his body tensed, and his nose twitched furiously. Daniels felt the tug on the leash and frowned. "Easy, boy," he muttered, giving a gentle pull, but Max wouldn't budge. His eyes locked onto the door as if it were hiding something monstrous. The hallway was deserted except for the flickering of a fluorescent light overhead, buzzing softly like a dying insect. Daniels looked around, feeling a shiver creep up his spine. Something felt off. Max let out a sharp bark, then another, louder this time, reverberating through the empty hallway. Daniels had seen that bark before, the one that said, "There's danger here and you need to pay attention." "All right, buddy, what is it?" Daniels knelt beside Max, resting a hand on his back. The dog's heart raced beneath his fingertips, and that's when it happened. A soft thump, almost too faint to hear, but Max heard it. Daniels froze, eyes narrowing. He pressed his ear against the door of the art room. Silence. Then another thump, this time followed by a scratch like fingernails, scraping against wood. "Jesus," Daniels muttered under his breath. He tried the door. Locked. Max's barking grew frantic, his paws scratching at the base of the door like he was trying to dig through it. Okay, easy." Daniels fumbled for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Daniels at Lincoln High. I've got a situation in the art room. Possible? I don't know. Possible trespassing? Send backup." A voice crackled back. "Roger that, Daniels. Units en route." Max circled anxiously, nose pressed against the doorframe. He let out a low whine, the kind that cut straight through. "You!" A cry for help only a dog could give. Daniels felt the weight of it settle in his gut. He wasn't just imagining things. Something was wrong in there. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more real-life stories of courage, loyalty, and the incredible bond between humans and their K9 partners. These stories matter, and your support helps us share them with the world. Back in the hallway, the rain intensified, rattling against the windows. A student, Sarah Lopez, sophomore, honor roll, always polite, peeked around, the corner her face pale. "Officer Daniels, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Go back to class, Sarah." "Stay clear of this area," Daniels said, voice firm but calm. Sarah hesitated, her eyes darting to the art room door, then to Max, who was still whining, pawing like a creature possessed. And then came the third sound. It was faint, but clear. Like a sob, a small broken sob. Daniel's blood ran cold. He took a step back, scanning the door. A standard lock, but the frame. It looked older, weaker. Max's intensity had only grown, barking and lunging as if the door were the last thing standing, between him and whatever was trapped inside. Daniels didn't wait for backup. He braced himself, counted to 3, and kicked the door hard. It barely budged the first time, but on the second kick, the frame splintered, the door swinging open with a loud crack. The room beyond was dark, the only light coming from the hallway behind them. Max darted in, sniffing frantically, tail stiff, ears back. Daniels followed, flashlight in hand. The smell hit him first, a mix of damp earth, old paint, and something else. Something off. Max went straight for the far corner of the room, where an old cabinet leaned against the wall. The dog pawed at it furiously, barking, whining, scratching as if he'd dig through the wood itself. Daniel swung the flashlight over the cabinet. That's when he noticed it. The baseboard along the wall had a gap, subtle, but there, and beneath it a thin line of dust had been disturbed as if it had been moved recently. Daniel's breath caught. He reached for the cabinet, but it was heavier than it looked, wedged tight against the wall. Max was losing it, his bark sharp and desperate. With a grunt, Daniel shoved the cabinet aside. It groaned in protest but slid enough to reveal what lay behind it. A trap door, old, wooden, worn by time, but unmistakably a trap door. Daniel stared at it, the adrenaline roaring in. His ears, Max, what the hell did you just find? He knelt, brushing away dust and debris, heart hammering. Max sat back, whining softly as if urging him forward but also warning, be careful. The sobbing sound came again, clearer this time. Help. Please. Help me. Daniel's stomach dropped. That wasn't just a noise. That wasn't his imagination. There was someone down there, and they were running out of time. The trapdoor creaked under Daniel's weight, the old wood groaning as if it hadn't been disturbed in decades. His flashlight beam trembled slightly, the weight of the moment pressing on his shoulders like a heavy winter coat. Max stood close by, his tail low, ears pinned back, nose twitching furiously as he whined. Low, urgent, almost like a plea. The hallway behind them was eerily quiet now, the distant hum of the rain fading as if the world above had been swallowed whole. Daniel swallowed hard. He glanced at the trapdoor handle, then back at Max, who stared at it like it was the key to a terrible secret. All right, buddy, Daniels muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Let's find out what's down there. He yanked the handle. The hinges squealed in protest, and a rush of cold, damp air wafted up, carrying a musty smell, earth mold, and something else. Something sharp, metallic. Daniels directed his flashlight into the darkness. A narrow wooden staircase led down, vanishing into the pitch-black void below. His gut twisted. "Dispatch, this is Daniels," he called into his radio, voice tight. "I'm at Lincoln High Art Room. We found a hidden space, looks like a basement. Proceeding to investigate. Backup ETA?" The radio crackled back. "Backup's 5 minutes out. Proceed with caution." Daniels clicked the radio off, jaw tight. 5 minutes felt like forever, and he wasn't sure this could wait. He turned to Max. The dog's eyes shone in the dim light, unwavering. Daniels knew that look. It was the same one Max had when they found that missing kid in the woods last year. The same one when they stopped a suspect with a weapon in a crowded mall. It was a look that said, "We don't have time." Daniels took a breath, steadying himself, and descended the first step. The wood creaked underfoot. Max followed immediately, his nails clicking softly on the old stairs. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The walls seemed to close in, lined with crumbling bricks and twisted pipes. The flashlight's beam cut through the darkness, revealing cobwebs thick as cotton and dust motes swirling like ghosts. Halfway down, Daniels caught it, faint at first, then unmistakable. A soft, ragged sob. Max froze, ears flicking forward, body tensed. Daniel's breath hitched. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing off the damp walls. "This is Officer Daniels with the police. If you can hear me, say something." Silence. Then, "Help. Me." The voice was weak, barely audible, but it cut through Daniels like a blade. Max let out a low, whimpering growl, pulling ahead, his body low to the ground as if bracing for a threat. They reached the bottom of the stairs. Daniels swept the flashlight. Across the floor, dirt, broken tiles, a few old paint cans scattered around. It looked like a forgotten storage space, but the walls were wrong. They weren't just brick. They were lined with old insulation, and in the corner, behind a pile of crates, was what looked like a makeshift door, hastily boarded up. Max darted toward it, barking sharply, his tail rigid, his paws clawing at the boards like he could tear through them. Daniels's heart pounded. Hold on, let me see. He reached for a crowbar lying nearby. Left there by someone, maybe recently, maybe not. He jammed it under the boards, bracing himself. The wood cracked, splintering loudly in the confined space. The sobbing grew louder, more frantic. Please, please. They locked me in. Daniel's stomach twisted into a knot. His pulse roared, in his ears. With a final heave, the boards broke free, clattering to the ground. Dust exploded into the air. Daniels coughed, waved it away, and shone his flashlight inside. There, in the corner, huddled in the fetal position, was a figure. Small, frail, barely more than a shadow. A girl. Her hair was matted, her face streaked with dirt and tears. Her clothes were rumpled, the fabric torn, and her hands trembled as she shielded her face from the light. Daniels felt his breath catch in his throat. Oh God. It's her, he whispered. Max let out a soft whimper and crept forward, tail, low, ears twitching as if sensing her pain. He gently nudged the girl's arm with his nose, and she flinched at first. Then, as if recognizing a lifeline, she clutched at Max, her sobs breaking into gasping breaths. They locked me in here. I couldn't get out, she whispered, her voice so small it barely registered. Daniels dropped to his knees beside them, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. She recoiled at first, then collapsed against Max's, sighed, burying her face in his fur. You're safe now, Daniels murmured, his voice steady but tight with emotion. You're safe. We're gonna get you out of here, I promise. He clicked his radio. Dispatch, Daniels. I have eyes on the missing student. Female, conscious, weak, needs medical. Get EMS here ASAP. The girl trembled, gripping Max like he was the only thing holding her to this world. Daniels took off his jacket, wrapping it around her shivering frame. Max stayed pressed against her, his body warm, his steady breathing a calm anchor in the chaos. As the sound of sirens finally began to echo in the distance, Daniels glanced around the space. That's when he saw it, something barely visible in the corner. A torn scrap of paper half covered in dirt. He reached for it, brushing away the grime. His flashlight illuminated a few words scrawled hastily across it. They said I was next. Daniel's heart sank. This wasn't just a kid getting lost. This wasn't an accident. Someone had planned this. Someone had locked her down here, and they weren't done yet. He felt Max press closer, the dog's gaze sharp and alert. Daniels exhaled, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like the air itself had thickened. They had found the girl. But this story wasn't over. Not even close. The sirens grew louder, their wailing pitch slicing through the rain-soaked evening as Daniels helped the girl toward the stairs. Max stayed glued to her side, his body tense but gentle, almost like he knew she needed him more than ever. Stay with me, sweetheart, we've got you. You're safe now, Daniels murmured, trying to steady the tremor in his own voice. The girl clutched Max's collar like a lifeline, her fingers trembling, lips blue from the cold and fear. Her eyes, wide, hollow, searching, kept darting around as if expecting someone, or something, to drag her back into the darkness. Daniel's flashlight flickered. For a split second, the beam danced across the corner of the basement, catching on something metallic half buried in the dirt. Box, Daniels froze. His instincts screamed at him, don't stop now, get her out, focus on her. But the box, it was small, dented and old, but it had a lock. One of those old combination styles you'd see on safes or lockers from decades ago. And scrawled across, the top, barely visible in the dust, was a single word etched in shaky handwriting. Confidential. Max let out a low growl, deep in his throat. Daniels felt a cold sweat trickle down his spine. He looked at the girl. She was staring at the box too, and then she whispered so quietly Daniels almost missed it. They said not to touch it, or we'd all be in trouble. Daniel's stomach twisted into a knot. The sirens were close now. He could hear doors slamming, the shuffle of boots on wet pavement, and voices calling out in the hallway above. But Something in Daniels wouldn't let him leave the box behind. All right, he muttered almost to himself, one thing at a time. He lifted the box, heavy for its size, and tucked it under his arm. The girl flinched, but Max pressed closer, his head nuzzling her side, steadying her. Together they climbed the creaky stairs, every step groaning under their weight. When they reached the top, Daniels pushed the trapdoor open wider, the damp, heavy air of the art room flooding back in like a slap. "Over here!" a paramedic shouted, rushing toward them. Daniels gently handed the girl off, watching as they wrapped her in blankets and checked her vitals. Max stayed close, tail low, but wagging gently, like he knew the hardest part, at least, for now, was over. As the girl was lifted onto a gurney, Daniels crouched beside her. "Hey," he said softly, placing a steady hand on her arm. "Can you tell me your name?" She swallowed hard, her voice a rasp. "Emily. Emily Carter." Daniels felt a chill run down his spine. Emily Carter. The missing girl, the one the whole town had been searching for, the face on every flyer, the name whispered in worried conversations, at gas stations and grocery stores. "Emily," he repeated gently. "Do you know who did this to you?" Her eyes darted to the art room door, her body shrinking in on itself. "Not safe," she whispered. "They're still here." Before Daniels could ask more, the paramedics wheeled her out. Max let out a sharp bark, standing guard as the team left the room. Daniels exhaled slowly, the adrenaline finally starting to drain from his system, but the unease in his chest only grew. He turned back to the box. It sat there on the dusty floor, unassuming but heavy with the weight of something dark. Something that felt bigger than just one missing girl. With a steadying breath, he clicked his radio. "Dispatch, this is Daniels. We've recovered the missing student, Emily Carter. Alive. Requesting detectives and evidence techs to respond ASAP. Also," he hesitated, looking at the box. "I've got an item here. Possible evidence. Looks sensitive. Handle with care." "Copy that," came the crackled reply. Daniels sat back on his heels, staring at the box like it might explode. Max sat. Beside him, gaze locked on the object, body stiff as if he could sense it too. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. If you've made it this far into the story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for Heroes for Animals. We bring you real stories of canine heroes like Max, risking everything to protect the vulnerable and uncover the truth. Your support helps us share these stories and honor these incredible dogs. Later that night, Daniel sat at his kitchen table, the box resting in front of him. The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge and the soft breathing of Max curled up at his feet. He hadn't been able to let it go. He stared at the combination lock, running his fingers over the numbers. Max stirred, ears twitching. Daniel sighed. "I know, boy. I shouldn't be doing this," but he couldn't help it. He rotated the dial, trying a few combinations at random. Birthdays, badge numbers, anything that came to mind. Nothing. The lock stayed tight, stubborn. He sat back, rubbing his eyes. That's when he remembered something. Emily's voice, her whisper in the basement. They said not to touch it. Who was they? Daniels leaned forward, flipping the box over. A faint scratch mark on the bottom caught his eye. Letters, worn but legible under the right light. LHS 219 Lincoln High School. Room 219. The art room. Daniel's heart started to race again. Max let out a low, warning bark, as if sensing the storm brewing. Daniel sat in the dark, the box cold against his fingertips, the weight of what it could hold heavier than ever. He knew what he had to do. Tomorrow, he'd be back at Lincoln High, and he wasn't, going alone. The rain had let up by morning, but the air still felt heavy, thick with something unspoken. Daniels parked his patrol car in the faculty lot, the familiar brick facade of Lincoln High staring back at him like it had something to say. Max sat in the passenger seat, ears pricked, eyes sharp, his body practically vibrating with anticipation. Daniels gripped the steering wheel for a moment, exhaling slowly, grounding himself in the routine, the badge on his chest, the cuffs at his side. the weight of the responsibility he wore like a second skin. But today felt different. The box sat on the seat between them, untouched since the night before. Daniels hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard Emily's voice. "They locked me in here. They said not to touch it." Max let out a soft whine, nudging Daniels' elbow like he could sense the storm brewing inside him. Daniels gave the dog a scratch behind the ears and opened the door. "Let's get to work, partner." They crossed the lot, Max's nails clicking on the wet pavement. The school was mostly empty, teachers prepping for the day, a few early students wandering in with heavy backpacks and sleepy eyes. Daniels nodded at the secretary, signed in, and headed straight for room 219. The art room. It was just as they'd left it, except now there was yellow tape stretched across the door, a silent warning that the space inside held more questions than answers. Daniels ducked under the tape and stepped in, Max close behind. The smell hit him first. Musty, like old books and damp wood mixed with the faintest trace of something metallic, like pennies left in the rain. The trapdoor was still open, but crime scene markers dotted the floor now, small numbered tents, next to scuffs, scratches, and a few stray paintbrushes. Daniels' eyes swept the room, catching on every detail. The cabinet they'd shoved aside, the dust patterns, the faint scratch marks on the floor, almost like claw marks. And then there was the wall, specifically the corner where the box had been hidden. Daniels crouched, running a gloved hand over the baseboard. The gap was subtle, but it was there, a thin line barely visible unless you knew where to look. He tapped it lightly. "Hollow. Max, search." The dog sprang into action, nose down, tail stiff, moving in tight, controlled circles. He stopped, at the base of the wall, letting out a sharp bark, then scratched at a spot near the floor, paws digging like he'd unearthed a treasure. Daniels knocked again, harder this time, a dull thud. His heart rate ticked up. He stood scanning the walls. Posters of student artwork fluttered slightly in the weak draft from the vent above. His gaze caught on a small smudge near the light switch, something oily, almost like a fingerprint. "Max," barked again, more insistent. Daniels followed the dog's line of sight and spotted a seam in the drywall, a faint, vertical line, like the edge of a hidden panel. "Good boy," he muttered, adrenaline flooding his veins. He glanced around, then grabbed a nearby stool, using it to boost himself up. Careful, deliberate, he ran his fingers along the seam, feeling for a latch or a switch. Nothing, but then, there, a slight indentation near the top corner, like someone had pressed it before. Daniels took a breath and pushed. With a soft click, the panel popped open, an inch. Max growled low, a sound that rumbled deep in his chest. Daniels swung the panel open fully and stared. Inside was a narrow cavity, maybe 3 feet high, barely wide enough for a small person to squeeze into. And crammed inside, files. Dozens of them, manila folders neatly stacked, each labeled with a student's name. His gut twisted as he read the names. Emily Carter, Brian Lowry, Rachel Pierce. Names from missing persons reports. Names from cases that had gone cold. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled a folder out. Paper clipped to the front was a photo. Emily, in a school uniform, smiling, brightly, taken sometime before all this had started. Beneath it, a typed document full of medical jargon and notes, words like Phase 2 candidate, observation, and chillingly, control group, non-voluntary. Daniels felt the room tilt slightly, the weight of what he was seeing sinking in like cold water. Max nudged his knee, a soft whine pulling him back to reality. Daniels took a steadying breath, then grabbed as many folders as he could carry, and laid them out on a table. The evidence team would need to see this. He scanned the pages quickly, eyes darting across terms that made his skin crawl: behavioral modification, chemical testing, sensory deprivation, and at the bottom of one report, a handwritten note: test subjects to be moved as necessary. secure basement access point, room 219 only. Daniels's pulse thundered in his ears. Who had access to this room? His mind raced through faculty lists, security staff, maintenance crews, and then it hit him. Mr. Anders, the art teacher. Always here late, always friendly but quiet, never really in the spotlight. Daniels had seen him around when they searched the school for Emily. He was the one who unlocked the door for them, said he hadn't seen anything unusual. Daniels' jaw tightened. Max barked sharply, ears perked toward the hallway. Footsteps. Someone was coming. Daniels gathered the files quickly, stuffing them into his bag. Max's body language shifted, tense, ready. The door creaked open slowly and a figure stepped into the room, silhouette framed by the dim light from the hallway. Mr. Anders. His eyes landed on Daniels, on the open panel, and then on the box still sitting on the table. His face paled, and for the briefest second a flicker of panic crossed his features, just enough for Daniels to catch it. The art teacher smiled tightly. Too tightly. "Officer Daniels," he said, his voice calm, measured but with an undercurrent that set Daniels' teeth on edge. "Didn't expect to see you here so early." Daniels straightened, body taut, eyes locked on Anders. "Yeah, well, some cases don't let you sleep." Max let out a low growl, barely audible. Anders' gaze flicked to the dog, then back to Daniels, his expression shifting ever so slightly. "You shouldn't be poking around in things you don't understand, officer," he said, voice lower now, a hint of threat curling around the words. Daniels' grip on the strap of his bag tightened. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Max tensed, eyes fixed on Anders, a silent sentinel ready to move. And Daniels, standing between the man and the evidence, knew in his gut. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The air between Daniels and Mr. Anders felt charged, like the static before a lightning strike. The faint hum of the fluorescent lights above seemed to grow louder, buzzing in the silence that followed Anders' words. Max stayed by Daniels' side, his body rigid, tail down, muscles coiled tight. His growl, a low vibrating warning, cut through the tension like a blade. Anders' gaze flicked to Max, then back to Daniels. For a moment his expression flickered like a mask slipping. There was a flash of something dark in his eyes, gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I think you should leave that alone." Anders said smoothly, gesturing toward the open cavity in the wall and the scattered files on the table. Daniels felt his pulse hammering in his ears. His instincts, honed by years on the force, screamed at him. This isn't just an art teacher. There was something off about the way Anders stood there. Too calm, too composed, as if he'd rehearsed this moment in his head 1,000 times. Daniels took a step forward, Max matching him perfectly, never breaking eye contact with Anders. "I'm going to need you to explain what exactly you're doing here, Mr. Anders," Daniels said, voice steady, measured, but sharp as a blade. Anders tilted his head, his smile widening ever so slightly. "I could ask you the same thing, officer," he replied, his tone cool as ice. "Isn't it a little early for unauthorized searches? Or are you just in the habit of breaking into faculty spaces before sunrise?" Daniels kept his face neutral, but inside his gut clenched. He knew Anders was stalling, trying to shift control. Max let out another low growl, stepping a fraction closer, his gaze never wavering. Daniels felt a surge of gratitude for the dog, his partner, his protector, his early warning system. Anders' eyes flicked to Max again, a subtle tension creeping into his posture. "You know," Daniels said slowly, voice quiet but dangerous. "It's funny how a missing girl gets found in a hidden basement, in your classroom behind a wall no one else knew about. And then we find this." He gestured to the files, hidden back there like someone didn't want us to see it. Anders' lips pressed into a thin line, but he didn't respond. Daniels took another step forward. "Tell me what the hell is going on, Mr. Anders." For a beat, Anders said nothing, just stood there, hands folded in front of him, calm as a Sunday school teacher. Then with a slow, measured breath, he said, Officer Daniels, you're not going to like the answers. Daniels's skin prickled. Max tensed, a soft, sharp bark escaping him as if he could sense the shift in the air. Daniels moved instinctively, stepping in front of Max slightly. Protective. "Try me," he said, voice low. Anders's smile vanished. He looked at Daniels, really looked at him, and something in his eyes hardened. "They're not just files," he said quietly. "They're records. Records of students. Trials, if you want to call them that. They've been doing it for years. Long before I got here. Long before you even knew this school existed." Daniels' breath caught. "Who's they?" he demanded. Anders tilted his head slightly, like a man debating whether to take a risk or walk away. "You think it's just me?" he said, almost amused. "You think this is just a rogue teacher with a few secrets?" He chuckled darkly, shaking his head. "You're in over your head, officer. Way over." Daniel's jaw clenched. He took another step forward, the heat rising in his chest. Max barked sharply, the sound loud in the tight space as if punctuating the tension. Anders' eyes narrowed. Daniel's fingers itched toward his radio, but something told him not to. "Not yet." "Where's the rest of it?" Daniels pressed. "The chemicals, the experiments, the rest of the students' files. Don't lie to me, Anders." Anders took a breath, and for a moment it looked like he might answer. But then a sound. Footsteps echoed down the hallway outside. Heavy. Deliberate. Anders' eyes flicked toward the door, then back to Daniels, a flicker of warning in his gaze. "You should leave," Anders said softly, almost like a plea. "Before it's too late." Daniels' pulse spiked. Max growled again, the sound deep and dangerous. Daniels turned his head slightly, catching a shadow moving just beyond the glass window in the hallway. Someone was out there. Watching. Waiting. Anders took a slow step back, raising his hands like he wanted no trouble. "I'm just the messenger, Daniels," he said quietly. "You need to understand that. I didn't start this. I didn't—" A loud crash shattered the moment. The window at the far end of the room exploded inward, glass raining down like sharp confetti. Max barked furiously, spinning toward the sound. Daniels ducked instinctively, adrenaline flooding his system. A figure burst through the window, masked, dressed in dark clothes, fast and deliberate. Daniels reacted without thinking. "Max, guard," he barked. The dog lunged forward, intercepting the figure mid-stride, teeth bared, a snarl ripping from his throat. The intruder stumbled, trying to shake Max off, but the dog clamped down hard on the man's forearm, dragging him toward the floor. Daniels dove forward, tackling the man as Max held tight. They hit the ground hard, a tangle of limbs and fury. "Police!" Daniels shouted. "Don't move!" The man struggled, kicking wildly, but Max adjusted his grip, a warning growl, vibrating through the room. Daniels cuffed the intruder's wrists with practiced precision, pinning him down as the man cursed under his breath. When the man finally stilled, Daniels sat back, chest heaving, and yanked the mask off. The man beneath it wasn't a stranger. It was the school janitor. Daniels' heart pounded. His mind raced. What the hell was going on in this school? Max sat back on his haunches, breathing hard, eyes locked on the intruder like a guardian angel in a canine's body. Daniel stared at the man on the floor, at Anders standing frozen by the door, and at the chaos of the room around him. This wasn't just a hidden basement. This was something much bigger, and it wasn't over. Not even close. Daniels could feel his heartbeat pounding in his ears, loud and unrelenting as the chaos in the art room settled into a tense, loaded silence. The janitor lay cuffed on the floor, breathing hard, eyes darting between Daniels, Max, and Mr. Anders, who stood frozen like a statue against the far wall. Max, still bristling with adrenaline, sat stiffly by Daniel's side, his gaze fixed on the janitor as if daring him to move. Daniels placed a hand on Max's back, grounding them both, feeling the rise and fall of the dog's chest. Steady, loyal, fierce. The janitor's mask was off now, his face pale, sweat beading at his temples. Daniels recognized him. Rick Dempsey. A quiet guy, mid-40s, always polite, always in the background. The kind of guy you barely noticed until now. "What the hell is going on here, Rick?" Daniels demanded, voice sharp and cutting. Rick's eyes flicked toward Anders, a quick, almost involuntary glance. That single look spoke volumes: loyalty, fear, maybe even guilt. Daniels caught it. Anders, for his part, stayed eerily calm. Daniels leaned closer, voice low and steady. "Talk to me, Rick, or I swear to God Max here won't be the only one biting today." Rick swallowed hard. His voice came out hoarse, strained. "I was just following orders. I didn't know they were going to lock her down there. I swear." Daniels's blood ran cold. "They?" he repeated, his gut tightening. Rick looked panicked now, glancing wildly around the room like he was trapped. "Who's they, Rick?" Daniels pressed, his voice gaining a hard edge. Rick hesitated, then blurted, "It's the program, the school board, the state, maybe even higher. I don't know. I just clean up. That's all I do. They said it was for research, some kind of study, behavior testing on kids. I don't know the details." Daniels felt the air suck out of the room. A program. Sanctioned, organized. Bigger than just one teacher and a shady janitor. His mind raced. Emily Carter, the files in the wall, the chemicals, the Phase 2 notes. The pieces were coming. Together. And it painted a picture that was darker than anything he could have imagined. Anders shifted slightly, like a man calculating his next move. Daniels noticed. "Don't," he warned, voice low, his hand inching toward his sidearm. But Anders wasn't reaching for a weapon. He was reaching into his pocket, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a small black flash drive. He held it, between two fingers like a chess piece, turning it in the dim light. "This is what you're really looking for, Officer Daniels," Anders said quietly, his voice a mixture of resignation and challenge. Daniels felt the room narrow around him. Max growled low, eyes locked on Anders's hand. "What's on it?" Daniels demanded. Anders's smile was grim. "Everything," he said simply. "The files, the names, the orders. Proof. The whole ugly truth." Daniels's breath hitched. Anders extended the flash drive toward him, but before Daniels could react, the sound of heavy boots echoed down the hallway. More than one set. Multiple. Fast. Daniels turned sharply, adrenaline spiking. Rick's eyes widened in pure fear. "It's them. They're coming," he whispered. Anders dropped the flash, drive onto the table with a soft clatter, and stepped back, hands raised as if surrendering to some inevitable force. Daniels had no time to think. He grabbed the flash drive, shoved it into his pocket, and pulled Rick to his feet. "Move!" he barked, pushing Rick toward the door. Max followed tightly at his side, tense and alert, his eyes darting toward the hallway. Daniels swung the door, open cautiously, peeking into the corridor. 3 men in dark suits were advancing, badges flashing, weapons holstered but ready. Their eyes locked on Daniels immediately, cold and unblinking. "Officer Daniels," the lead man said, his tone clipped and authoritative. "Hand over the evidence now." Daniels' pulse thundered. His instincts screamed this wasn't a request. It was a demand backed by power. He glanced at Max, at Rick, at Anders, who stood back with an unreadable expression. The weight of the moment pressed down on him like a vice. He could hand it over, walk away, pretend none of this had happened, or... Daniels squared his shoulders. "Yeah," he said slowly, voice calm but firm. "I don't think so," Max barked sharply, a single defiant sound that echoed down the hallway like a battle cry. Without another word, Daniels spun, grabbing Max's collar and dragging Rick along as they bolted down the opposite end of the corridor. "Stop them!" one of the men shouted. Footsteps thundered behind them. Max surged forward, ears flat, body low, guiding Daniels like a missile through the maze of hallways. They burst out into the rain-soaked parking lot, tires screeching. As cars pulled up, sirens wailing in the distance. Daniels shoved Rick into the back of his cruiser, Max leaping into the front seat. His own breath came in ragged gasps as he threw the car into gear and peeled out of the lot. In the rearview mirror, he saw Anders standing in the doorway of the school, watching them disappear into the gray, misty morning, his face unreadable. Daniels gripped the wheel tight, Max panting hard beside him. Rick slumped in the back, trembling. The flash drive in his pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not even close. And the next move was his. Thank you for sticking with this story. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it? What do you think Daniel should do next? Should he go public, or is there more danger waiting in the shadows? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Can't wait to hear from you.